The rain had been falling for 3 days straight. When Marcus finally broke down in the parking, lot of Sacred Heart Hospital. Not the kind of breakdown where you shed a few tears and pull yourself together. The kind where your knees give out against the cold concrete, where the sobs come from somewhere so deep you didn't know that place existed inside. Where you stop caring that strangers might see you falling apart. His daughter was inside that building, 7 years old, fighting a battle no child should ever have to fight. And he had just maxed out his final. Credit card paying for medications their insurance wouldn't cover. The world kept spinning around him as he knelt there in the rain. Cars pulled in and out of parking spaces. People hurried past with umbrellas. Life continued, indifferent to his breaking heart. And that indifference felt like its own special kind of cruelty. He had always been the strong one, the provider, the man who fixed problems and made things right. But leukemia didn't care about his work ethic or his determination. It didn't care that he'd taken every extra shift the hospital cafeteria offered. It didn't care that he'd sold everything of value he owned. Medical bills had a way of making you feel small, powerless, insignificant. That's when he heard the voice. Soft, uncertain, but somehow cutting through the sound of rain hitting pavement. "Sir, are you okay?" Marcus looked up through his tears to see a young woman, maybe mid-20s, holding a bright yellow umbrella over his head. She wore scrubs covered in cheerful cartoon characters, the kind nurses wear in pediatric wards, and her eyes held genuine concern rather than the pity he'd grown accustomed to seeing. "I'm fine," he lied, the words automatic, meaningless. She didn't move, didn't accept his deflection. Instead, she crouched down beside him, her umbrella now sheltering them both, and said something that would change everything. "No, you're not. And that's okay. My name's Sarah." Something about the simplicity of her statement. The permission it gave him to not be okay made Marcus start talking. He told this stranger about Emma, about how she loved drawing unicorns and wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up, about how she'd asked him that morning why he looked so tired all the time. And he'd lied again, telling her he was fine when the truth was he couldn't remember the last time he'd slept more than 3 hours. About how he'd just realized he had $17 in his bank account and Emma needed another round of treatments that would cost thousands. Sarah listened without interrupting, without offering empty platitudes about how everything happens for a reason or how God doesn't give you more than you can handle. When he finished, she simply said, "Can I meet her?" Over the next week, Sarah started showing up during her lunch breaks to read to Emma. She brought her own, battered copies of children's books, stories about brave princesses and magical adventures, and Emma's face would light up in ways Marcus hadn't seen in months. Sarah never mentioned what Marcus had told her in the parking lot. She just showed up day after day, bringing small moments of joy into a hospital room that had become Emma's world. Then one Tuesday afternoon, Sarah arrived with a woman named Patricia, who looked to be in her 60s with silver hair pulled back in an elegant bun. "Patricia is one of my patients," Sarah explained. "She wanted to meet Emma." What Marcus didn't know was that Patricia had been where he was standing 15 years earlier. She'd sat in hospital rooms watching her grandson fight the same disease, feeling the same helplessness, the same crushing weight of medical bills and diminishing hope. She'd gotten through it, her grandson had survived, and she'd spent the years since looking for ways to pay forward the kindness strangers had shown her family. Patricia spent an hour talking with Emma about her drawings, then quietly pulled Marcus aside. "Sarah told me about your situation," she said. "With your permission, I'd like to help." Pride made Marcus want to refuse, but love for his daughter made him nod. Patricia made a phone call, then another. Within 48 hours, she had connected Marcus with a nonprofit organization that specialized in helping families with pediatric cancer expenses. She'd called the hospital's billing department herself, leveraging relationships. She'd built over years of volunteer work to negotiate payment plans. She'd even reached out to her church community. And suddenly, Marcus found himself surrounded by people bringing meals, offering rides, providing the kind of support system he'd been trying to carry alone. But the real surprise came 2 weeks later when Sarah knocked on Emma's hospital room door with tears streaming down her face, this time tears of joy. "There's someone here to see you both," she said. The man who walked in was Dr. James Chen, one of the country's leading pediatric oncologists. He'd flown in from Boston after Patricia, who happened to be a major donor to the hospital, had sent him Emma's case files and asked him to consult. "I've reviewed your daughter's case extensively," Dr. Chen said, pulling up a chair, "and I believe she's an excellent candidate for a new immunotherapy treatment we've been developing. It's showing remarkable success rates, and I'd like to offer Emma a spot in our clinical trial. All treatment costs would be covered." Marcus couldn't speak. He looked at Sarah, then Patricia, then back at this doctor who had traveled across the country for his little girl. Emma, perceptive as always, grabbed his hand. "Does this mean I get to go home soon, Daddy?" The treatment wasn't easy. There were setbacks, frightening moments, when her numbers dropped and Marcus felt the familiar grip of fear around his heart. But slowly, week by week, Emma started getting better. Her color returned. Her energy came back. The day she was declared in remission, Marcus stood in the same parking lot where he'd broken down months before, but this time tears of gratitude streamed down his face. Sarah found him there, not crying this time, just standing in the afternoon sun. "You saved her," Marcus said. "I don't know how to thank you." Sarah shook her head. "You're thanking the wrong person. Patricia did most of the heavy lifting, and Dr. Chen's treatment gave Emma her fighting chance. But you started it all. You stopped when everyone else just walked by." Sarah smiled, a bit sadly, and told him something he hadn't known. 5 years ago, I was in a car accident, bad one. I was trapped in my car, scared, injured, and in shock. A stranger stopped, stayed with me, held my hand until the paramedics arrived. I never got their name, never got to thank them. Ever since then, I've been looking for ways to pass along what they gave me that day, the simple act of being, present when someone needs you. I didn't save Emma, I just stopped walking by. The truth of human connection, Marcus realized, wasn't always about grand gestures or dramatic rescues. Sometimes it was about the courage to crouch down beside someone in the rain, to ask if they're okay and actually wait for a real answer, to see someone's pain and decide it matters. Emma's recovery continued through the spring and into summer. 1 year after Marcus's breakdown in the parking lot, Emma was back in school, her hair growing back in soft curls, her dreams of becoming a veterinarian still bright and alive. Marcus had started a support group at the hospital for other parents of children with serious illnesses, sharing resources, offering the kind of lifeline that had been thrown to him when he needed it most. Patricia became a regular fixture in their lives, more grandmother than family friend, teaching Emma to bake cookies and telling stories about her own grandson, who was now in college studying medicine, wanting to help others the way he'd been helped. And Sarah? She kept showing up, not just for Emma, but for the other children on the pediatric ward, bringing her bright yellow umbrella and her boundless capacity for presence. She'd learned that sometimes. The greatest gift you can give someone isn't solving their problems. It's reminding them they don't have to face those problems alone. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Marcus returned to that parking lot with Emma, who insisted on bringing a painting she'd made. It was a portrait of Sarah, holding her yellow umbrella, surrounded by rain that looked less like a storm and more like falling stars. "For stopping," Emma said simply when she gave it to Sarah. Sarah hung it in her apartment, and every time she looked at it, she remembered why she'd become a nurse in the first place. Not to cure everyone, that was impossible, but to care for everyone, to stop when others walked by, to be present in moments that mattered. Because that's the thing about kindness. It doesn't always save the day in obvious ways. It doesn't always cure diseases or solve financial crises or fix broken systems. But it creates connections. It reminds us that we're not alone. It plants seeds that grow in ways we can't always predict, spreading outward in ripples we may never fully see. Marcus learned this watching his daughter thrive, watching a community that had formed around one moment of human decency in a hospital parking lot. He learned it every time he sat with another terrified parent in that support group and offered the same presence Sarah had given him. The world can be cruel and indifferent. Medical bills can be crushing. Diseases can be terrifying. But running parallel to all that, darkness is something else, something stubborn and persistent and ultimately more powerful. The simple human choice to see each other, to stop walking by, to hold an umbrella over someone who's breaking down in the rain. That choice doesn't always change everything. But sometimes, when the moment is right, and the need is great, and the heart is open, it changes enough. And enough, Marcus discovered, looking at his daughter's bright face as she colored another unicorn at their kitchen table. Enough was everything.